So we are picking up with chapter 3 of Joseph Campbell's Primitive Mythology. It's in the section on mythology of the primitive planters. Chapter 3 is the culture province of the high civilizations. Section 2, the Basal Neolithic, circa 5500 to 4500 BC. The second phase of the crucial Near Eastern development can be assigned schematically to the millennium between 5500 and 4500 BC, and termed the Basal Neolithic. Settled village life on the basis of an efficient barnyard economy now becomes a well-established pattern in the nuclear region, the chief grains being wheat and barley, and the animals the pig, goat, sheep, and ox, the dog having joined the human family much earlier, as an aid to the hunters of the late Paleolithic, perhaps circa 15,000 BC. Pottery and weaving have been added to the sum of human skills, likewise the arts of carpentry and house building, and the role of women has perhaps already been greatly enhanced, both socially and symbolically. For whereas in the hunting period the chief contributors to the sustenance of the tribes had been the men, and the role of the women had been largely that of drudges, now the females' economic contributions were of first importance. She participated, perhaps perhaps even predominated, in the planting and reaping of the crops, and as the mother of life and nourisher of life, was thought to assist the earth symbolically in its productivity. However, no one can speak with certainty of the social and religious place of woman in this period, for the meager evidence of the bones and coarse pottery shards reveals nothing of her lot. One has to read back hypothetically from the evidence of the following millennium, 4500 to 3500 BC, when a multitude of female figurines appear among the potsherds. These suggest that the obvious analogy of woman's life-giving and nourishing powers with those of the earth must have already led man to associate fertile womanhood with an idea of the motherhood of nature. We have no writing from this pre-literate age, and no knowledge, consequently, of its myths or rites. It is therefore not unusual for extremely well-trained archaeologists to pretend that they cannot imagine what services the numerous female figurines might have rendered to the households for which they were designed. However, we know well enough what the services of such images were in the periods immediately following, and what they have remained to the present day. They give magical, psychological aid to women in childbirth and conception, stand in house shrines to receive daily prayers, and to protect the occupants from physical as well as spiritual danger, serve to support the mind in its meditations on the mystery of being, and since they are frequently charming to behold, serve as ornaments in the pious home. They go forth with the farmer into his fields, protect the crops, protect the cattle in the barn. They are the guardians of children. They watch over the sailor at sea and the merchant on the road. A number of the typical and apparently perennial roles of this mother goddess can be learned, furthermore, by simply perusing the Roman Catholic Litany of Loreto, which is addressed to the Virgin Mother Mary. She is there called the Holy Mother of God, the Mother of Divine Grace, and the Mother of Good Counsel, the Virgin most renowned, Virgin most powerful, Virgin most merciful, Virgin most faithful. And she is praised as the mirror of justice, seat of wisdom, cause of our joy, gate of heaven, morning star, health of the sick, refuge of sinners, comforter of the afflicted, and Queen of Peace, Tower of David, Tower of Ivory, and House of Gold. Among the symbols associated with the great goddess in the archaic arts of the Mediterranean, we find the mirror, the kingly throne of wisdom, the gate, the morning and evening star, and a column flanked by lions rampant. Moreover, among the numerous Neolithic figurines of her, we see her standing pregnant, squatting as though in childbirth, holding an infant to her breast, clutching her breasts with her two hands, or one breast while pointing with the other to her genitals. The posture modified in the Roman period in the celebrated image of the same goddess found in the Porticus of Octavia, and now in Florence, the Medicean Venus. Or again, we may see her endowed with the head of a cow, bearing in her arms a bull-headed child, standing naked on the back of a lion, or flanked by animals rampant, lions or goats. Her arms may be open to the sides, as though to receive us, or extended holding flowers, holding serpents. She may be crowned with the wall of a city, or again she may be sitting between the horns or riding on the back of a mighty bull. Section 3. The High Neolithic, circa 4500 to 3500 BC. In the period in which this Neolithic constellation of naked female figurines first appears, and which may be called the High Neolithic, the pottery becomes suddenly, very suddenly, extraordinarily fine and beautifully decorated, showing, moreover, a totally new concept of ornamental art and of the organization of aesthetic forms, one such as had never before appeared in the history of the world. In the earlier Paleolithic art of the great caves of southern France and northern Spain, of which we treat in Part 3, one finds no evidence of any concept of the geometrical organization of an aesthetic field. In fact, the painted or incised surfaces of the cave walls were so little regarded as fields of aesthetic interest that the animals frequently overlap each other in great tangles. Nor do we find anything like a geometrically organized aesthetic field in the works surviving from the latter terminal stages of the Paleolithic. Many of the petroglyphs in the later stages of the Hunting Age have lost their earlier impressionistic beauty and precision. Some have even deteriorated into mere geometrical scrawls or abstractions. Furthermore, on certain flat painted pebbles that have been found in what were apparently religious sanctuaries of the hunters, geometrical devices appear: the cross, the circle with a dot in the center, a line with a dot on either side, stripes, meanders, and something resembling the letter E. However, we do not find, even in this latest stage of the hunting period, anything that could be termed a geometrical organization, anything suggesting the concept of a definitely circumscribed field in which a number of disparate elements have been united or fused into one aesthetic whole by a rhythm of beauty. Whereas suddenly, very suddenly, in the period that we are now discussing, which coincides with the appearance in the world of well-established, strongly developing, settled villages, there breaks into view an abundance of the most gracefully and consciously organized circular compositions of geometrical and abstract motifs on the pottery of the so-called Halaf and Samara styles. And we find certain symbols in the centers of these designs that have remained characteristic of such organizations to the present day. In the Samara ware, for example, there occurs the earliest known association of the swastika with the center of a circular composition. There is in fact only one earlier known occurrence of the swastika anywhere, on the underwings of an outstretched flying bird carved of mammoth ivory and found in a Paleolithic site not far from Kiev. We find the Maltese cross, too, in the centers of these earliest known geometrical designs, occasionally modified in such a way as to suggest stylized animal forms emerging from the arms. And in several examples, the figures of women appear, with their feet or heads coming together in the middle of the circular design to form a star. Again, the forms of 4 gazelles may circumambulate a tree. A number of bowls show lovely wading birds catching fish. And there's an image here of a couple of pottery designs circa 4000 BC, Halofware on the left and Samaraware on the right. I'll show you that. You can see that image there. The archaeological site after which this superb series of decorated vessels has been named, Samarra, is located in Iraq on the river Tigris some 70 miles above Baghdad. And the area over which the ware has been diffused extends northward to Nineveh, southward to the head of the Persian Gulf, and eastward across Iran as far as to the border of Afghanistan. The Halofware, on the other hand, is scattered through an area northward of this, with its chief center in northern Syria, just south of the so-called Taurus or Bull Mountains of Anatolia, now Turkey, where the river Euphrates and its tributaries descend from the foothills to the plain. And what is most remarkable is the prominence in this beautifully decorated northwestern ware of the bull's head, the so-called bucranium, viewed from the front with great curving horns. The form is rendered both naturalistically and in variously stylized, very graceful designs. Another prominent device in this series is the double axe. We find the Maltese cross once again as in Samarra, but no swastika for these graceful gazelle designs. But no swastika nor these graceful gazelle designs. Furthermore, in association with the female statuettes, which are numerous in this context, clay figures of the dove appear, as well as of the cow, humped ox, sheep, goat, and pig. One charming fragment represents the goddess standing, clothed between 2 goats rampant, that on her left a male, the other a female giving suck to a young kid. And all the symbols are associated in this Halafian culture complex with the so-called beehive tomb. But this is precisely the complex that appeared a full millennium later in Crete, and from there was carried by sea through the gates of Hercules, northward to the British Isles and southward to the Gold Coast, Nigeria, and the Congo. It is the basic complex also of the Mycenaean culture, from which the Greeks and thereby ourselves derived so many symbols. And when the cult of the dead and resurrected bull god was carried from Syria to the Nile Delta in the 4th or 3rd millennium BC, these symbols went with it. Indeed, I believe that we may claim with a very high degree of certainty that in this Halafian symbology of the bull and goddess, the dove and the double axe, we have the earliest evidence yet discovered anywhere of the prodigiously influential mythology associated for us with the great names of Ishtar and Tammuz, Venus and Adonis, Isis and Osiris, Mary and Jesus. From the Taurus Mountains, the mountains of the bull god, who may already have been identified with the horned moon, which dies and is resurrected 3 days later, the cult was diffused, with the art of cattle breeding itself practically to the ends of the earth. And we celebrate the mystery of that mythological death and resurrection to this day as a promise of our own eternity. But what experience and understanding of eternity and what of time give rise in that early period to this constellation of eloquent forms? And why in the image of the bull? The Sumerians. An important development full of meaning and promise for the history of mankind and civilizations to come took place in the latter part of this same period, circa 4000 BC, when certain of the peasant villages began to assume the size and function of market towns, and there was an expansion of the culture area southward onto the mudflats of riverine Mesopotamia. This is the period in which the mysterious race of Sumerians first appears on the scene, to establish on the torrid Tigris and Euphrates delta flats sites that were to become presently the kingly cities of Ur, Kish, Lagash, Eridu, Sippar, Shuruppak, Nippur, and Erech. The only natural resources there were mud and reeds. Wood and stone had to be imported from the north, and very soon little copper beads would begin appearing among the imports, for the age of metal was about to dawn. But the mud was fertile, and the fertility annually refreshed. Furthermore, the mud could be fashioned into sun-dried bricks, which now appear for the first time in history, and these could be used for the construction of temples, which likewise now appear for the first time in the history of the world. Their typical form is well known. It was that of the ziggurat in its earliest stages, a little height artificially constructed, with a sanctuary on its summit for the ritual of the world-generating union of the earth goddess with the lord of the sky. And if we may judge from the evidence of the following centuries, the queen or princess of each city was in those earliest days identified with the goddess, and the king, her spouse, with the god. The painted pottery from the earliest level of these South Mesopotamian riverine sites is known to archaeology as Obeid ware, after an excavated mound, Tel el Obeid, just south of the southern reach of the river Euphrates, not far from the ancient city soon to rise, of Ur, from which Father Abram and his wife Sarai are supposed to have departed, Genesis 11:31. And this again is a fine geometrically ornamented ware, somewhat less graceful, perhaps, and less colorful than the products of the rich Halaf and Samara styles, but remarkably beautiful nonetheless. Its designs, with few exceptions, are not polychromatic, but painted on a light background in one color only, black or brown, and the period is dated circa 4000 to 3500 BC. Okay, so with that, we'll take a break. Next time, we will finish Chapter 3, starting with Section 4, the hieratic city-state, circa 3500 to 2500 BC. Thanks again for joining me. Hope you have a great day.